I spent $10, $200 on my parents' big night, and my name wasn't on the guest list. 78 seats. Mine was number 0. I stood in the golden glow of their vow renewal, clutching the clipboard I paid for as relatives celebrated under string lights, and everyone but me had a seat. When I first signed the contract with Evergreen Events, I felt proud until I realized nobody had signed me in as a guest. Instead, I was the unseen force behind every detail, every dollar, every desperate late-night text to the florist. Point 1. The financial commitment. I had wired my parents $10,000 for the venue deposit months ago, then quietly covered an extra $200 for emergency flowers when the original centerpieces wilted in mid-June heat. I watched that money disappear from my checking account wire confirmation clinking in my inbox like a promise. We've got it covered. But coverage didn't mean inclusion. It meant I became the bank, not the beneficiary. Point 2, the logistical marathon. I fielded calls at dawn. Dad's tuxedo measurements are wrong again. Can you resend the vendor list to the piano player? The caterer forgot gluten-free labels. I rearranged tables when my uncle toppled a centerpiece, negotiated drinks packages so no guest went thirsty, and even staged a covert recon of the parking lot to ensure Aunt Marie's lifted sedan could fit. I arrived 3 days early, set up rehearsal dinners, and slept on a fold-out chair in their guest house alert to every ping of, "Can you fix this, though?" I was never invited to sit down. Point 3. The emotional investment. I canceled an engagement party for a friend, let my vacation days vanish, and swallowed resentment each time Mom brushed lint off my black dress and said, "Sweetie, you look the part, no one will notice you working." She meant it kindly, but kindness draped in expectation is its own kind of knife. I took pleasure in each perfect bloom, each glowing chord from the piano, imagining the joy on their faces until I scanned the golden lit hall and found 78 names, and mine was nowhere. My clipboard trembled in my hand, not because I feared the work, but because I realized that love measured in hours and dollars had been deemed invisible. When I caught my reflection in a mirror, black dress, hair pinned back, makeup impeccable, I understood I'd been cast as staff, not family. What does it feel like to pay for your own erasure? It feels like empty chairs echoing louder than any applause, a validation of every unpaid favor stacked against you until you question whether belonging ever existed at all. And in that hush of string lights and whispered champagne toasts, I knew that help was just another word for invisible labor, one that demands gratitude yet denies recognition. As I stepped into the reception hall, clipboard in hand, the warm glow of the chandeliers felt less like celebration and more like a spotlight on my own erasure. I had wired $10,000 for the venue deposit, and an extra $200 for emergency florals arrived 3 days early to oversee every last detail, and yet when I scanned the printed list of 78 guest names pinned to the foyer wall, I felt a chill as I realized, point 1, my name was nowhere to be found. There, right under Aunt Marie, Cousin Melanie, even the piano player and the florist, each name marked in elegant script, everyone but Emma Williams. My heart pounded as I slowly traced each line with my fingertip, trying to believe it was a typo, an oversight, a misprint. But when I turned to Mom expecting alarm or apology, she simply brushed invisible lint from my black dress and chirped, "You look the part, no one will even notice you're working." Her words meant kindly landed like a cold dismissal. Point 2, her certainty that invisible labor didn't deserve visibility. Even Dad chanting the same chorus reminded me in a gentle tone, "We needed help, sweetie. You said you wanted to contribute, and you've been part of it all." His calm voice clashed with the jagged edges of betrayal lodged in my throat. I whispered the truth. I gave you $10,000, Dad, plus $200 of my own money for those centerpieces. But he only smiled and walked away with Mom leaving me clutching that clipboard as if it were the last proof of my own existence. Point 3. The first sting of betrayal when I understood it wasn't an accident but a decision made in tandem, a pact to render me staff rather than family. I stood alone beneath the soft golden lights, watching cousin after neighbor breeze past me to their reserved seats, champagne flute in hand, laughter rising in gentle waves. I felt my shoulders tighten as realization settled. When your family writes you out of the story, they're telling you who you are in their eyes, and I was the waitress, not the guest. In that moment, I vowed that invisible labor would no longer be my role, that love measured in unpaid hours and unacknowledged dollars deserved an accounting. I slipped the clipboard into my clutch, squared my shoulders, and prepared for the reckoning that had been waiting in the wings ever since the invitations went out, only I never received mine. From the moment I confronted Mom about my missing name, her kindness turned into an instrument of coercion. She patted my shoulder and murmured, "Sweetheart, we know you're busy. Standing up all night won't be fun. No point in wasting a seat you'll never use." Her voice was soft, but each syllable cut deep. Point 1, weaponized kindness disguised as concern. When I pressed back, I paid for that seat. Dad swooped in with a gentle lecture, "You offered to help, and help you have." His words felt like velvet ropes tightening around my throat, a reminder that I'd chosen to give so I couldn't complain when my giving erased me. That was the first taste of gaslighting. Point 2, reframing my rightful grievance into ingratitude, making me doubt my own memories and intentions. Then came the social media facade. In the days leading up to the party, Mom posted glowing family-first photos on Facebook, everyone smiling under string lights, bottles of champagne raised in a toast tagging cousins, neighbors, even the hired harpist. But never me. I scrolled through that feed, each post a reminder that in their narrative I didn't exist. Point 3. The curated online image that broadcast their perfect family while quietly deleting their daughter. Their feed read like a scripted proof of love, yet behind the scenes I was reduced to invisible labor. Between whispered helpful recommendations, let us handle the seating. You're too busy for pleasantries and the cheerful cheers emojis next to cousin selfies, I felt suffocated by their insistence that I accept my place. They insisted I was being dramatic when I choked back tears, telling me, it's just one night, as if years of unnoticed effort could be smoothed over by a single phrase. I became convinced for a moment that I was overreacting, that maybe I should take a seat at the back table, press a smile, and serve drinks with gratitude. But underneath their gentleness lay the harsh truth: they expected my silence. That evening, as I moved through the golden-lit hall, I realized the cruelest gaslight of all was their conviction that ignoring me was a kindness, that excluding me from celebration somehow shielded me from discomfort. Yet no kindness is kind when it demands your invisibility. In that swirl of well-meaning betrayals, I understood that guilt, when wielded by those you love, can become more painful than outright malice, and that sometimes the only way to reclaim your worth is to walk away from the circus of kindness turned weapon. That morning, I stood in the empty foyer before the doors opened, heart pounding with a strange relief. I had reached my breaking point. Point 1. The silent revolt. Without a word, I opened my bank app and transferred every last cent I'd earmarked for their celebration venue caterers' flowers back to my own account. I drafted curt emails to each vendor: please cancel all services and refund deposits. My parents have decided to call off the event. No apologies, no explanations, just the cold click of send. I watched the confirmation notifications pop up: refunds pending, cancellations accepted, as if they were small victories in a war I'd been fighting alone. Point 2. Sabotaging the celebration. By 2 p.m., I'd driven to the reception hall, slipping in through the side door. I replaced the music playlist with silence, disconnected the extra speakers, and set the wine coolers to empty. When guests arrived, servers found only half the bottles stocked. The string quartet had been redirected with a polite, "We've had a scheduling conflict." By 4 p.m., the party ground to a halt. No toasts, no late-night dancing, just chairs pushed back, empty tables, and stunned relatives whispering, "Where is Emma?" Meanwhile, I quietly packed up the emergency flowers I had paid for, slipping the petals into my tote. Each frantic call from a vendor or cousin was met with the same little smile and shrug. Sorry must be a mix-up. It was disorienting to watch their perfect evening unravel under my fingertips, but I felt a fierce satisfaction knowing that my invisibility would no longer be my burden. Point 3. Emotional clarity. As the hall emptied and lights dimmed 2 hours early, I stood beneath the string lights I'd installed, absorbing the sudden hush. I realized then that blood doesn't make you, family expectations do. Their decision to erase me wasn't a mistake. It was a statement of what they valued. I had spent months sacrificing my time, my relationships, my financial security to craft their dream night, only to be denied a single seat. In that pale glow, I understood that my worth wasn't tied to their acceptance. I stepped outside into the cool air, the memory of their forced smiles flickering behind me like ghosts. With every echo of scraping chairs and clacking heels, I felt my old self fall away. Walking back to my car, I didn't shed a tear or scream in rage. Instead, I held my head high, steadied by the knowledge that I had reclaimed my agency. The perfect celebration they insisted on would end in emptiness, and I was free. Free from invisible labor, free from weaponized kindness, and free to build a life where my presence is welcomed, not checked off on a spreadsheet. Sometimes the only way to break through someone's cruelty is to break the script they wrote for you, and in doing so, rediscover the family you choose, not the one they imposed. In the days that followed the party's abrupt end, my inbox became a battleground of emotions. Point 1. The initial backlash. Uncle Robert's curt text landed first. "You're overreacting. Why ruin a perfectly good celebration?" Cousin Mark left a voicemail that made my stomach knot. "Can't believe you'd pull a stunt like that on your own parents." Even Dad, usually silent, fired off a terse email. "Family is family. You've gone too far." Their words stung because they echoed the same dismissal I'd felt when they'd erased me from my parents' vow renewal. It was as if my act of self-preservation were a crime rather than a necessary boundary. But then came point 2. The unexpected lifelines. Aunt Laura, my dad's sister, emailed me a photo of Ryan and me from our engagement party. Captioned, "You two deserve every ounce of happiness. Thank you for reminding me what family really means." Her words were a balm, reminding me that love isn't confined by blood but by those who truly see you. Megan, my cousin and longtime confidant, called in tears. "I'm so sorry I stayed silent while everyone ranted. I should have told them what I knew about Cassie's antics." Her apology felt like a hand reaching through the rubble, pulling me towards solid ground. Even my godmother, who rarely texted, surprised me with a message. "Your wedding should have been a celebration, not a crisis. I wish I'd helped more." Their solidarity became a shield against the tide of criticism. Point 3. The reckoning of true support. By midweek, I realized that while toxic voices can be loud, authentic ones carry more weight. Neighbors I'd barely known dropped off handwritten notes and leftover cake. Childhood friends sent care packages and phone calls of encouragement. A former teacher shared an article about self-worth that made me weep with relief. In their kindness, I found the reflection of my own value, no longer defined by endless favors or silent labor, but by mutual respect and genuine love. As the storm of opinions settled into a gentle breeze of messages labeled, "Take care of yourself," and "We're here for you," I understood the real gift that had emerged from the wreckage, a community that chose to stand by me when everything I thought was family splintered. I closed my phone and took a deep breath, free of the compulsion to explain or defend. In the war of words, allies had tipped the balance, proving that when you claim your worth, you make room for those who truly belong. And in that quiet aftermath, I realized I was never alone. My chosen family had risen unwavering, ready to celebrate me as more than the invisible labor I once appeared to be. I realized that reliving their erasure demanded more than anger, it required proof. So I built my evidence archive. Point 1. Financial records. I pulled up bank statements showing 12 monthly transfers, $10,000 to anniversary venue deposit, $200 to emergency florals, and even the $500 tip I'd added when Dad forgot to pay the maitre d'. Each wire confirmation became a testament to my invisible labor. I printed them out, organized by date, and labeled every line "Funds from Emma Williams unacknowledged." Point 2. Audio proof. Next, I dared to capture their voices unscripted. 2 nights before the party, while helping Mom address place cards, I hit record on my phone. Angela's whispered question, "Are we really excluding her?" And Mom's curt reply, "She's not a guest, she's staff," echoed in my memory, but the file on my phone transformed that recollection into undeniable evidence. I trimmed the timestamps, burned copies to a flash drive, and noted the exact moment their words cut me out of my own family narrative. Point 3. Digital footprint. Finally, I compiled screenshots of every family first post. Mom shared photos, tagged with cousins, neighbors, and the cake designer, yet always omitting me. I captured Angela's mocking group chat meme, "Charger level up with me," bent over the dessert table, clocking in for invisible work. I even unearthed her draft Photoshop files, faked emails, casting me as jealous, and voice-cloned recordings intended to frame me as unstable. Each digital artifact became a chapter in the dossier I curated, erasure by design. As I assembled the folder, white binders labeled "Finance Audio Digital," the weight of their gaslighting and guilt-tripping transformed into tangible truth. No longer was I forced to doubt myself. The documents and recordings spoke louder than any well-meaning denial. I printed headers in bold, "You paid, you decided your voices, your words, your image, your lies," and arranged each section chronologically so anyone glancing through would feel the slow crescendo of betrayal. By the time I stepped into their kitchen to arrange the documents for our brunch meeting, I held not just receipts, but a roadmap of how I had been erased and how I was reclaiming my story. The evidence archive wasn't a weapon. It was the ledger of my worth, proving that love measured in clandestine favors and unpaid favors deserved acknowledgement. In that methodical assembly of proof, I transformed my pain into power, showing that when you document every slight, you build the strongest case for being seen, heard, and finally included. I arrived at my parents' marble-topped kitchen island 10 minutes early, the slim navy blue folder labeled Evidence Archive, tucked under my arm like a shield. Mom greeted me with her trademark weaponized warmth. "Isn't this lovely, just the 4 of us?" while Angela scrolled her phone in the corner, oblivious to the weight of what I carried. Dad sat at the head of the table, newspaper open, pretending he hadn't just texted me for brunch without acknowledging my vanished voice. I slid the folder onto the island with a soft click that silenced the room, then looked them each in the eye and said, "I thought today we'd clear the air." Mom's smile flickered. "Let's not make this a big deal," she gushed, reaching for the mimosa pitcher. I held up a hand. "Actually, it is." I opened the binder to the first section, printed bank statements, each wire labeled anniversary, deposit, or event flowers, totaling $200 transferred from my account with no seat reserved. I watched as Mom's lips parted, then closed in a straight line. Angela's scrolling thumb froze. Without raising my voice, I said, "These are the funds I sent for the venue and extras I never got to enjoy." I let the silence stretch before flipping to the next tab: audio transcripts. I tapped my phone, and Mom and Angela's hushed conversation played through the small speaker. She's not a guest. She's staff. The two women paled, shoulders dropping as truth echoed in the air. Moving to the final section, I passed around printed screenshots, Mom's Facebook posts tagged with every cousin but me, Angela's group chat meme calling me staff in disguise, even her draft Photoshop files plotting to cast me as jealous and dramatic. I laid each one on the counter like evidence in a trial. Dad folded his newspaper with a grim sigh. Angela's phone clattered onto the marble with the force of her shame. No one spoke. I closed the binder gently and said, "I'm no longer the invisible labor you call on and erase at will. I've documented every slight, every unpaid favor, and I'm done." My voice was steady, my resolve clear. Mom reached for the folder, but I pushed it away. "No," I said softly. "Today I close this chapter." I gathered the binder, turned on my heel, and walked to the door. Behind me, Mom's forced kindness dissolved into stunned silence. Angela stared after me, mute with regret. Dad simply watched as I left no offers to placate or apologies to mend what they broke. Outside, I breathed deeply, feeling the weight of their expectations lift from my shoulders. The brunch confrontation wasn't a grand spectacle. It was the final proof that I belonged not by blood or obligation, but by choosing to be seen and refusing to be erased. By the following week, I realized that my fight for recognition could become a force for change, so I transformed the evidence archive into a public reckoning. I registered invisibleatthetable.com, uploaded every bank statement, audio clip, and screenshot with annotations, and wrote a personal essay explaining how unpaid labor becomes erased when family sees you only as help. Then I launched a companion YouTube series named Off the Guest List, where I narrated my story across 30-minute episodes, each one ending with an invitation for viewers to share their own experiences of invisibility. Within 24 hours, the site traffic surged past 50,000 hits, and the first video surpassed 30,000 views. Forwarded by strangers and local news blogs, my story landed on community forums where people wrote, "This is my life too, and thank you for giving us language to name our pain." Local reporters contacted me for interviews, curious about the unconventional way I'd canceled a polished celebration and then built an online movement from the wreckage. My public reckoning video dove into how traditional family roles can mask exploitation and how documenting those dynamics can flip the script. Viewers responded with gratitude and solidarity. Stay-at-home daughters who'd funded their parents' retirements, brothers who'd fronted wedding costs only to be sidelined caregivers whose work was never acknowledged. Their comments flooded in stories of erased contributions, feelings of resentment, but also the first glimmers of empowerment. Encouraged by the responses, I applied to the Creative Impact Fund for underrepresented storytellers, on a hunch using footage from my series and excerpts from my archive as a pitch. 3 months later, I was awarded $25,000 plus mentorship to produce a documentary titled Seating Arrangements, exploring how families across America invisibilize their own. The grant validated that my experience was not an isolated oddity, but part of a broader cultural pattern. With these resources, I hired a small production team, cinematographers, editors, sound engineers, and began filming in neighbors' homes, community centers, and listening sessions where people shared their untold labor stories. Each interview became a mirror: invisible daughters, sidelined sons, overworked grandchildren, all finding their voices in front of the camera. As the documentary took shape, its trailer earned another 100,000 views online, and speaking invitations arrived from women's organizations and elder care councils eager to discuss family dynamics. My parents and sister watched from the sidelines, Mom's Facebook feed, quiet Angela's new account locked and empty of content, while my story gained momentum. In public reckoning, I discovered that naming injustice can catalyze empathy and accountability far beyond one kitchen table. What began as a solo act of self-preservation evolved into a movement of recognition and respect, proving that when you refuse to be erased and invite others to speak, invisible labor is finally seen and honored. That journey showed me that reclaiming your worth can light the path for countless others. From empty chairs at my parents' vow renewal to a flooded inbox of solidarity, I discovered that being erased isn't a verdict, it's a call to create your own table. By archiving every wire transfer, voice memo, and family meme, I turned unseen labor into undeniable truth, transforming personal pain into a collective reckoning. And through the website and YouTube series, strangers became allies, sharing stories of caregiving and quiet sacrifice that had gone unacknowledged for decades. In the end, the greatest victory wasn't the refunded deposits or the viral views, it was the shift from silent endurance to vocal empowerment, the realization that boundaries are acts of self-respect, and that genuine love uplifts rather than erases. My parents' marble kitchen and their unspoken invitation are now memories I use to fuel a documentary that gives voice to every invisible daughter, son, or sibling. If you've ever poured your heart into something only to be sidelined, share your story in the comments below. Let's build a community that honors the labor our families take for granted. And if you believe that everyone deserves a seat at the table of recognition and respect, subscribe and click the bell for more real-life tales of resilience, boundary setting, and the power of turning erasure into impact. Together, we can ensure that no act of love remains invisible.